right, picking back up in the book of Augustine, The City of God Against the Pagans. This was edited by R.W. Dyson, and this was written in the late 300s, just to let you know. And we are in Book 7, Chapter 11. Of the additional titles of Jupiter, which are held to refer not to many gods, but to one and the same God, the Romans have called him Victor, Invicticus, Aptulus, Impulsor, Stator, Centumpeda, Saponilus, Tigilius, Almus, Ruminus, and by other names too numerous to list. They have applied these additional titles to the one God by reason of diverse causes and powers. Yet, although he has so many functions, they have not required him to be as many gods. He conquers all. He is unconquered. He brings help to the needy. He has the power to impel, to halt, to establish, to overthrow. Like a being, he maintains and sustains the world. He nourishes all things, and he feeds all animals by the ruma, that is, by the breast. As we see, there are among these things some that are great and others that are small. Yet one God, small g, is supposed to perform them all. The causes of things and their beginnings, by reason of which our adversaries have wished to say that the one world is two gods, small g, Jupiter and Janus, are, I think, more closely related to one another than are the maintaining of the world and the giving of the breast to animals. Even for two tasks so different in power and dignity as these, however, no need was felt for two gods, small g. For the one Jupiter was called Tigilius with respect to the first, and Ruminus with respect to the second. I do not say that it would have been more suitable for Juno rather than Jupiter to proffer the breast to sucking animals, especially when there was also a goddess Rumina to help and serve her in this task. For I think it may be replied that Juno herself is none other than Jupiter, according to those verses of Valerius Sorananus, where it is said, Almighty Jupiter, begetter of kings and things and gods, small g, mother of the gods, small g also, one God comprising all. Why then was he called Ruminus, when if we were perhaps to seek more diligently, we should find that he is also that goddess, Rumina? When we consider the case of one stalk of wheat, we rightly thought it unworthy of the majesty of the gods that the care of the knots should pertain to one god, small g, and that of the sheaf to another. How much more unworthy is it, then, that the care of one trivial task, namely, the nourishing of animals from the breast, should require the power of two gods, one of whom is Jupiter himself, the king of all things? What is more, he performs his task not with his own wife, but with some obscure Rumina. It may be, however, that he himself is indeed Rumina, Ruminus for sucking males, perhaps, and Rumina for females. I have said that the Romans would not have wished to attach a female name to Jupiter, were it not for the fact that he is called both begetter and mother in those verses of Valerius Sorananus. Also, I have read that among his other titles, he is called Pacuna, one of the goddesses whom we found among those minor deities of whom we have already spoken in the 4th book. But let them answer this: since both males and females have money, why is he not called Pacuna and Pacunus, as he is called Rumina and Ruminus? Very good. This guy, I mean, he knew what he was talking about. He most certainly did, but see, he lived during this time, so he knew all the craziness that they believed in. Chapter 12. That Jupiter is also called Pecunia, Pecunia. So I'm going to say it's called Pecunia. How elegant indeed is the account which the Romans have given of this name. And he is called Pecuna, Varro says, because all things are his. What a marvelous reason for naming a divine being. Indeed, for God, small g, to whom all things belong, to be called money is most vile and insulting. For what are all those things worth which, taken together, men possess under the name of money, in comparison with everything that is contained in heaven and on earth? But no doubt it was avarice which assigned this name to Jupiter, so that whoever loved money might seem to love no ordinary god, small g, but the king of all things himself. It would be a very different matter if Jupiter were called riches, for riches are one thing and money another. We call men rich who are wise, just, and good, even if they have little or no money. It is by reason of their virtue that they are rich, because through them they are content with what they have, even if the things necessary for bodily life are lacking. The greedy, however, are poor, for they are always grasping and always wanting. No matter how enormous the amount of money they can command may be, no matter how great its abundance, they cannot do anything but want. And we rightly call the true God himself rich. Not, of course, in money, but in all power. Therefore, though people with plenty of money are called rich, they are inwardly poor if they are greedy. By the same token, those who lack money are called paupers, but they are inwardly rich if they are wise. What then is the wise man to make of the theology which bestows upon the king of the gods the name of something which no wise man has ever desired? For if there was anything wholesome and pertinent to eternal life to be learnt from this doctrine, how much more readily would the God, small g, who rules the world, have been called by it not money but wisdom, the love of which purges the soul from the defilement of greed, that is, from the love of money. Chapter 13. What then it is explained that Saturn is and what Genus is. We learn that they and Jupiter are one and the same. But why say more of this Jupiter, if it is true that all the other gods, small g, are to be equated with him? In which case, the opinion that there are many gods is Vasuus or Vasuus. It's Vacuous. Since if they are deemed to be his parts or powers, he himself is all of them. And this opinion is equally Vasuus if it is thought that the animating force supposedly diffused throughout all things receives the name of the various gods, small g, from the parts which the mass of this visible world combines within itself, and from the manifold operations of nature. What, for instance, is Saturn? He is one of the principal gods, small g, says Varro, who has lordship over the sowing of all seeds. But did not Varro's exposition of those verses of Valerius Soranus establish that Jupiter is the world, and that he emits all seeds from himself and receives them into himself? It is Jupiter, then, who has lordship over the sowing of all seeds. And what is genius? The god, small g, says Varro, who is set over and who has power over everything that is begotten. But do not our adversaries believe that nothing else has this power except the world, which was called Jupiter, the begetter and mother? They don't even know what they're serving. Bottom line, Satan. But do not our adversaries believe that nothing else has this power except the world, which was called Jupiter, the begetter and mother. And when in another place, Varro says that a genius is the rational soul of each man, that each individual therefore has one, and that the soul of the world is God. He brings us back to the same conclusion, that we are to believe that the soul of the world itself is a universal genius, and that this is what they call Jupiter. For if every genius is a god, small g, and if the soul of every man is a genius, it follows that the soul of every man is a god, small g. And if the very absurdity of this conclusion compels even our adversaries to reject it, then it remains for them to give the name genius in this singular and preeminent sense to the god small g, whom they call the soul of the world. That is Jupiter. 14. Of the offices of Mercury and Mars. They have not, however, found a way of equating Mercury and Mars with any parts of the world and with the working of God in the world's elements, so that they have set them over the works of men, at least of the ministries of speech and warfare, respectively. There we go. But if Mercury wields power over the speech of the gods, small g, also, that is, if Jupiter speaks according to the will of Mercury, or has received from him the faculty of speech, then Mercury is Lord, small l, of the very king of the gods, small g, which is absurd, which is clearly absurd. If, however, it is power over human speech, only which is thought to be assigned to Mercury, then it is impossible to believe that Jupiter is willing to descend to giving the breast not only to children, but to animals also, for which reason he is called ruminous, yet is unwilling to have the care of our speech, by reason of which we excel the beasts assigned to him. For this reason, then, it would seem that Jupiter and Mercury are the same. But perhaps it is the faculty of speech itself which is called Mercury, as certain things which are said in interpretation of the name suggest. For it is said that he is called Mercury, which means he who runs between, because speech runs between men. Also, he is called Hermes or Hermes in Greek, because speech or interpretation, which certainly pertains to speech, is called hermeneia by the Greeks. Hence, also, he presides over business transactions, because speech passes between sellers and buyers. Again, the wings on his head and feet signify that speech flies through the air like a bird, and he is called a messenger, because language is the messenger which proclaims all our thoughts. If, therefore, Mercury is the faculty of speech itself, then by our adversary's own admission, he is not a god, small g. But, though they make God, small g, for themselves, who are not even demons, still, when they pray to unclean spirits, they are possessed by those who are not gods, small g, but demons. My God. Again, because they could not find any element or part of the world for Mars either, where he might perform some natural work or other, they have called him the god, small g, of war, which is a work of men, and not a work of the most desirable kind. If, therefore, felicity were to give everlasting peace, Mars would have nothing to do. But perhaps war itself is called Mars, just as speech is called Mercury, in which case it is again clear that he is not a god, small g. Would that it were equally true that there were no war to be falsely called a god. Chapter 15. Of certain stars to which the pagans have given the names of their gods. And you did hear that he said certain stars, not planets. Number 15, of certain stars to which the pagans had given the names of their gods. But perhaps these gods are the stars which have been called by their names. For the pagans call one star Mercury, and again another Mars. But there is also a star called Jupiter. Yet for them the world is Jupiter. There is also a star called Saturn. Yet they give to him a task of no small importance, namely responsibility for all seats. There also is this brightest of all the stars, that which they call Venus. Yet they wish to say that the goddess Venus is also the moon. Moreover, Venus and Juno are rivals for that most brilliant star, as though it were another golden apple. For some say that the morning star belongs to Venus and some to Juno. As always, however, Venus conquers. For by far the greater a number assign that star to Venus, so much so that there is hardly any one to be found who holds the opposite view. But who can keep himself from laughing when they say that Jupiter is the king of all, yet his star is so far surpassed in brightness by that of Venus? For his star should have been as much more brilliant than the rest as he himself is more powerful. Our adversaries reply that Jupiter looks as it does because the star which is thought to be more dim is in fact higher and much more remote from the earth. If, then, the greater dignity deserves the higher place, why is Saturn still higher in the heavens than Jupiter? This guy, he knew his stuff, didn't he? Was the vain fable which made Jupiter the king not able to reach as far as the stars? And has Saturn at least been permitted to obtain in the heavens what he could not obtain either in his own kingdom or in the capital? Moreover, why did Janus not receive some star? If it is because he is the world and all the stars are in him, the world is also Jupiter's, yet he has one. Or did Janus come to the best arrangement he could and accept the extra faces which he has on earth in place of the one star that he does not have in the heavens? Again, if it is only as stars that Mercury and Mars are deemed to be parts of the world, and so can be reckoned as gods, small g, for, of course, speech and war are not parts of the world, but activities of men, why have the Romans not established any sacred rites or temples for Aries and Taurus and Cancer and Scorpio, and the rest which they number as celestial signs, which consist not of single stars, but each of them of many stars? These, they say, are located in the highest part of the heavens, where a more constant motion imparts to the stars an invariable course. Why, then, have they not recognized these as gods, small g, and do not say among the select gods, small g, but not even among them as it were plebeian gods, small g? How interesting is that, you guys? They're wandering stars. They're not planets. They're wandering stars. And they even knew that back then. And that's something else. It's just amazing. 16. Of Apollo and Diana and the other select gods whom they wish to call parts of the world. Although our adversaries wish to say that Apollo is a diviner and physician, still give him a place as part of the world. They say that he is also the sun, and similarly that his sister Diana is the moon and the guardian of roads, which is why they chose to call her a virgin, for a road produces nothing. God have mercy. And both of them have arrows, because those two heavenly bodies shoot their rays from the heavens to the earth. They choose to call Vulcan the fire of the world, Neptune the water of the world, and Dispater, that is Orcus, the earthly or the earthy and lowest part of the world. Liber and Cres they place over seeds, the former over male seeds and the latter over female, or the one over moist seeds and the other over dry. And all this together is referred back to the world, that is, to Jupiter, who is called the begetter and the mother, because he emitted all seeds from himself and received them into himself. Sometimes, however, they wish to say that this same Ceres is the great mother. And then they say that she is nothing else but Earth, and that she is also Juno, and therefore they attribute to her the secondary causes of things. It is Jupiter, however, who is called the begetter and mother of the gods, small g, because according to them, the whole world itself is Jupiter's. Minerva also, because they placed her over human arts, yet did not find even a star in which to set her. They have said to be either the highest part of the ether, or even the moon. Again, Vesta herself, they have supposed to be the greatest goddess of all, because she is the earth. How many people, not people, gods or whatever, are the earth? This is crazy, guys. Seriously. I mean, they needed to get together and figure out who's going to do what, rather than all the stupidity that they've done here. Well, it is stupid. There's only one God. But anyway, here we go. Again, Vesta herself, they have supposed to be the greatest goddess of all because she is the earth, yet they have also believed that the milder fire of the world, that which readily belongs to the use of mankind, not the more violent like kind of Vulcan, is to be assigned to her. And in this way, they wish to say that all those select gods, small g, are this world, some of them being the whole of it, and some of them its parts. For instance, Jupiter is the whole of it, whereas Genius, the Great Mother, Sol, and Luna, or rather Apollo and Diana, are parts of it. And sometimes they make one god many things, and sometimes one thing many gods, small g. Many things are one god in the case of Jupiter himself, for the whole world is held and said to be Jupiter, and the sky is Jupiter, and the planet is Jupiter. Again, Juno is the mistress of secondary causes, and Juno is the air, and Juno is the earth, and if she could overcome Venus, Juno would also be a star. Similarly, Minerva is the highest part of the ether, and Minerva is also the moon, which they deem to be at the lowest limit of the ether. But they also make one thing into several gods, for the world is both Janus and Jupiter, and so to the earth is Juno, and the Great Mother. Yeah, sorry. I think that's Ceres, guys. I've been saying Ceres or something. I think it's Ceres. I believe it is. It's Ceres. Not positive, but I think that's how it's pronounced. Chapter 17. That even Varro himself declared his own opinions of the god, small g, to be ambiguous. And as with those things which I have cited as examples, so with all the rest. They complicate rather than explain. They rush hither and thither, first to one side, then to another, as errant opinion impels them. So that even Varro preferred to doubt everything rather than to affirm anything. For having completed the first of his last 3 books concerning the certain gods, small g, and having in the second of these begun to speak of the uncertain gods, small g, he says, I ought not to be reproached when in this book I set down doubtful opinions concerning the gods. For if anyone supposes that a firm judgment can or should be given, let him give one for himself when he has heard what I have to say. For my own part, I can more easily be led to doubt what I have said in the first book than to bring what I shall write in this one to any final conclusion. Thus he renders uncertain not only what he says concerning the uncertain gods, small g, but also what he has to say concerning the certain gods, small g. Then in his 3rd book concerning to the select gods, small g, after initial discussion of as much of the natural theology as he thought necessary by way of introduction, he comes to the vanities and insane lies of the civil theology. And here he is not only lacking the guidance of the truth of things, but is also oppressed by the authority of tradition. He says, I shall in this book write of the public gods, small g, of the Roman people, to whom they have dedicated temples, and whom they have singly honored by many adornments. But writing after the fashion of Exanophanes of Colophon, I shall give an account of my opinions, not of what I know, for in these matters man has opinions, but only God has knowledge. It is not then an account of things understood or firmly believed that Varro definitely promises when about to describe the institutions of men, but of things which are only matters of opinion and doubt. There were things that he knew, that there is a world, that heaven and earth exist, that heaven is replacent with stars, that the earth is fertile with seeds and things of this kind, And he also believed with firm conviction that this whole mass of nature is ruled and governed by a certain invisible and proponent force. But he could not, with the same conviction, affirm that Janus is the world, nor could he find out how Saturn was both the father of Jupiter and yet had been made the subject of Jupiter as king, and other things. Chapter 18. A more believable account of how pagan error became established. I'm sorry, excuse me. And I'm just going to say the reason I keep saying small g is I don't want someone to come in the middle here and then start hearing this and thinking that I'm teaching foreign gods, that I believe in foreign gods. So I want to make sure that I make, a note that it's a small g. It's not a god. It's not. Okay. I don't even know. So anyway. Number 18, a more believable account of how pagan error became established. A more believable account is rendered of these gods, small g, when it is said that they were men, and that sacred rites and solemn festivals were established for each one of them, according to his genius, character, actions, and circumstances, by those who chose to worship them as gods, small g. These rites, creeping little by little into the souls of men, souls which resemble the demons in their eagerness for theatrical displays, spread far and wide as the poets adorned them with lies and deceitful spirits, seduced men to accept them. For it is more likely that some ungodly young man, longing to rule, or afraid of being slain by an ungodly father, dethroned his father, than that Varro's interpretation of the story of Saturn's overthrow is correct. That Saturn was overthrown by his son Jupiter, because cause, which belongs to Jupiter, comes before seed, which belongs to Saturn. If Varro's version were the true one, Saturn could never have been first, nor could he have been the father of Jupiter, for the cause always precedes the seed and is never generated from the seed. But whenever even the ablest men attempt to dignify the most vain fables of human deeds by giving naturalistic interpretations of them, they suffer such difficulties that we are compelled to grieve over their vanity also. Chapter 19. Of the interpretations by means of which a reason for worshiping Saturn is contrived. They say, Varro remarks, that Saturn was wont to devour his offspring. This, however, means that seeds return to the place whence they came. And when he says a lump of earth was placed before him to be devoured instead of Jupiter, this signifies that before the usefulness of plowing was discovered, seeds were buried in the earth by the hands of men. The earth itself, therefore, are not the seeds, should have been called Saturn, for it is the earth which, in manner of speaking, devours what she has produced, because the seeds which have sprung from her return again to be received into her. And as the story that Saturn received a lump of earth in place of Jupiter, how is this supposed to show that seeds were covered with soil by the hands of men? How can it be true that because it was covered with earth, the seed was not devoured like other things? Varro seems to assume that he who placed the soil took away the seed, as Jupiter is said to have been stolen from Saturn when the lump of earth was placed before him. For surely the seed would have been devoured all the more thoroughly had it been covered by the soil. On this view, however, Jupiter is the seed and not, as we said a moment ago, the cause of the seed. But what are we to do with men who, because they are interpreting foolish things, cannot find anything wise to say? Saturn, Varro says, has a sickle because of agriculture. When he was king, however, our Agriculture did not yet exist, and therefore, according to the interpretation of the fables given to that same Varro, his times were regarded as the earliest, because the first men lived on such seeds as the earth brought forth spontaneously. But perhaps he received the sickle when he lost the scepter. I'm sorry, God. Help me, Jesus. He just makes it so, he just shows the absurdity of it. Okay. So that he who in the earliest times was a leisured king, because a toiling laborer under the rule of a son. Next, Varro says that certain peoples, such as the Carthaginians, habitually sacrificed children to Saturn, and that others, such as the Gauls, also sacrificed adults, and that this was done because the human race is the best seed of all. What need is there to say more of this most cruel vanity? Let us rather notice this and cling to it, that these interpretations have no reference to the true God, who is a living, incorporeal, immutable being, from whom is to be sought a life blessed for all eternity. Rather, they have their end in things corporal, temporal, mutable, and mortal. Varro says, when in the fable Saturn castrated his father, are you serious? I don't even know what to say right now. Okay. Varro says, when in the fable Saturn castrated his father Uranus, this signifies that the divine seed belongs to Saturn and not to Uranus. What this means, as far as we can understand it, is that nothing in heaven is produced from seed. But lo, if he is the son of Uranus, then Saturn is the son of Jupiter, for our adversaries are careful to affirm on countless occasions that Jupiter is the heaven. So it is that those things which do not come from the truth often overthrow one another themselves, even when no one assails them. And that's so true right there. Varro also says that Saturn was called Chronos, which in the Greek language signifies a period of time, without which, he says, a seed cannot be fruitful. These and many other things are said concerning Saturn, and all refer to seed. But surely Saturn, with such great power, should have been equal to the task of caring for seed by himself. Why are other gods, small g, required for this task, especially Liber and Liberia, which is Ceres? Yet of these gods, small g, and their relation to seed, Varro says as many things as he had said nothing of Saturn. Chapter 20. Of the rites of Augustine, Ceres. Now the rites of Ceres, those of Eleusis, are renowned, for they were regarded among the Athenians as being the most noble. Varro gives no interpretation of these except in relation to grain, which Ceres discovered, and to Proserpine, whom Ceres lost when Orcus carried her off, and who, he says, signifies the fertility of seed. When this fertility departed at a certain season, and the earth was mournful by reason of its barrenness, the belief arose that the daughter of Ceres, that is, the fertility which had been named Proserpine from Proserpir, had been carried off by Orcus and imprisoned in the underworld. This circumstance was celebrated by public mourning. Then, when the same fertility returned once more, there was joy at Proserpine's return, and for this reason the rites were instituted. Varro then says that many things are taught in her mysteries, all of which pertain to the discovery of grain. Chapter 21. Of the wickedness of the rites celebrated in honor of Liber. Now comes the rites of Liber, whom the Romans placed over liquid seed, and for this reason, not only over the juice of fruits, of which, in a certain sense, wine holds the first place, but over the semen of animals also. As to these rites, it is wearisome to speak at great length of the depth of wickedness which they have been plumbed. Not too wearisome, however, given that our adversaries are so proud in their stupidity. Among other things, which I am compelled to omit because of their number, Varro says that certain rites of Liber were celebrated in Italy, which were of such unrestrained wickedness that the shameful parts of the male were worshipped at crossroads in his honor. This indeed was not even done in secret, to preserve at least some modesty, but with an unconcealed display of baseness. For during the days of the festival of Liber, this obscene member, placed on a little trolley, was first exhibited with great honor at the crossroads in the countryside, and then conveyed into the city into the city itself. I can't even get over this. I'm so sorry, you guys. I just hate that. Okay. In the town of Lavinium, the whole of 1 month was assigned to Liber, during the days of which all men made use of the most obscene language until the member was carried through the forum and brought to rest in its own place. And upon this dishonorable member, it was necessary that the most honorable matron should publicly place a crown. And that kind of like, I'm making me think of the obelisk, the phallus. Seriously, for real. This is probably the origins of it, I'm assuming. I don't even know. In this way, it seems, the god Liber, small g, was to be propitiated in order to secure the growth of seeds and to repel enchantment from the fields. A matron was compelled to do in public what even a prostitute would not have been allowed to do in the theaters if there were respectable women in the audience. Wow. This was the reason, then, why Saturn was not believed to be sufficient by himself for the cure of seeds, namely, so that the impure soul might find occasion for multiplying the gods, small g, and so that being justly abandoned by the one true God for its impurity, and being prostituted to the many false gods, small g, by reason of its avidity for greater impurity, it should call these sacrileges sacred and give itself up to be violated and polluted by hordes of foul demons. Wow. Chapter 22 of Neptune and Salacia and Vanilia. I think it's Vanilia. Hold on 1 minute. Let's do his thing. Are you stuck, Charlie? Are you stuck, Charlie? He's stuck in the cupboards, guys. He can't get down. Okay. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to have to pick up later because they are going to bark, or maybe they're going to be done. Let's see here. I'm going to have to hold on 1 minute.